Hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth Uncovered, No Bull, the second weekend in a row that we're going to have this series. Before we start, I'm going to let more viewers get into the room here. But today, we're going to kind of continue on what we continued on my last live stream. If you want to give a shout out, where you're from, say hello. A couple of people have already said hello. Hello, Cindy. Hello, Profe, Mark, Kai, and also DJ Buzzard. Welcome from Virginia. I actually lived in Virginia in Falls Church, Virginia for a little while. Actually, it was a border of Arlington and Falls Church, the Four Corners area. Or is it? Four Corners area. We're going to continue from last week. One of the things that I talked about in my last week's live stream was that there's been a lot of YouTubers that have been doing videos about how to live in different places for less than $1,000 a month, how to live in a place for some of the YouTubers even do for $500 a month, or how to live on Social Security. Actually, continuing from last week's live stream, Tangerine Travels even did another video saying how you can live on Social Security. And in that video, he even went about pulling up charts on how a nurse makes just as much, or you make more on Social Security as a nurse, so you will be able to live here on Social Security. And I'd even noticed one of the comments that someone made a comment that, well, I can't live there on Social Security because I don't qualify for residency. And of course, the typical answer was, there's alternative methods to proving financial solvency. There's other methods. And this is something that's been misconstrued, kind of a play on words. This is kind of a thing that has been going on. Actually, the same thing with expat services. It's not just YouTubers, but it's mainly YouTubers that do these types of videos. And what I explained the last time, we're going to go into that in the second portion of this. But I want to start out by explaining the residency requirements. And I'm going to bring up a chart here that I created so that you can know the truth about the residency. Because at the end of my last live stream, one of the things that I mentioned was that there's a difference between living here on $1,000 a month and meeting the residency requirements. Those are two different things. And I'm here to say you can live here on $1,000 a month. Depending on your lifestyle, depending on where you live, you can live here on $1,000 a month. There's nothing keeping you from living here on $1,000 a month, granted that you get some type of legal status here in Mexico. And we're going to discuss those legal statuses. This is the part. And what I mentioned the last time, and we're going to go into this, is that we need to separate this. But the problem is that these YouTubers are doing these videos because that's what gets views. That's what people put in the search engine. When people go to YouTube, nobody goes into YouTube to say, what if I get in a car accident in Mexico? Or what if I get sick in Mexico? Most of the YouTube searches, and actually there's tools on the internet where you can actually go and look, what are the best search terms? What are the most, as a matter of fact, I even have a plugin when I'm uploading my videos, and when I put in tags, it'll tell me what are people searching for? What are the top searches? And believe it or not, the top searches is living in Mexico on $1,000 a month, living in Mexico on a budget. Those are the search terms. So somebody like Tangerine Travels, and like I said before, I'm only using them as an example. They make money off of this. So what do? They actually go and they see what the search terms are that actually are generating views, because the more views they get, the more they make money. This is what it comes down to. And of course, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to make money, I'm going to see what's going to catch people's attention. And as a matter of fact, even on the, on the thumbnail that Tangerine Travels did, he even put this like, stop, like kind of like you can't live on Social Security, but it's all to get you to click on the video. And all of us in YouTube, we all have our different methods of trying to get you to click on the video. That's not anything new. But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go over the financial solvency requirements, and then I'm also going to go over the alternatives. Yes, there's alternative ways. But one of the things that I'm going to explain to you today is that these alternative ways aren't very consistent, okay? So even if you, what's going on right now is there's this misconception that, well, there's alternative ways. Well, yes, there's alternative ways, but you have to qualify for those alternative ways. And the problem is what's being said is there's alternative ways, but the whole alternative ways isn't being explained totally. Or just like I said in the last live stream, Jose came on and said, all you have to do is be retired. You just have to be retired. And you don't have to show financial solvency, which is not true. Okay. And I'm even going to go over the law that his lawyer cited. I'll tell you what article and what section, but you got to understand there's a second part to being retired. Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull out and actually I'm going to pull up a chart here. Let me have some patience with me. I'm going to pull up a chart that I created. Okay. This is my immigration chart right here. Okay. And we have the types of residency. All right. And actually, I put this on the top because it's not a type of residency, but it's a type of coming here to Mexico. But we're going to visit the first one. This one you obtain at the port of entry. When you enter into Mexico, excuse me, I don't produce a lot of saliva because of the cancer, because it was in the throat. So sometimes I have to drink water. But the first method, and this is one of the methods that's always mentioned, okay, about totally legal, but I'm going to go over this method first, even though it's an alternative method per se. But the first method is you obtain it at the port of entry. And this is and I say tourist visa, and I know a lot of people have corrected me because if you're from the United States, you don't need a visa. You can actually come present yourself with a U.S. passport and you can ask for permission to come into the country. You don't actually need a visa. But the reason why I put visa here is because some countries do need a visa, okay? And the reason why I put visa here is because everybody understands the term tourist visa, okay? But actually it's a tourist FMM, Forma Migratoria Múltiple. FMM, that's what it stands for. And the FMM actually is used for multiple reasons. And I also put 6 months here. It's actually 180 days. Depending on the calendar, 180 days can be more or less than 6 months. But I always put this 6 months here because that's what we understand. I'm trying to simplify things here. I'm not trying to trick anybody here. And also, this is only for visiting, not residency. Actually, in Article 52 of the Leyes de Migración, it says, visitor without permission to carry out paid activities. Now, you can also be a visitor that's coming to carry out a non-paid activities, or you can come in as a visitor that's coming in to carry out paid activities, or you can come in as a visitor for humanitarian. You're going to come in, you're like the Peace Corps. So there's different kinds of visitor visas, but these are called visitor visas, okay? They're not for actually residing here. We're going to go into the alternative methods, but this is, you're allowed to come into the country for up to 180 days. I just want to go over that part of the chart. Now, let's go up into this chart here. And then let's look here. Hold on. And we're going to go to our temporary residency. Okay, this starts at or permanent residency down here. If you look down here, I got the permanent residency. This usually starts outside and we're going to also go over down here where you can actually apply outside in Mexico, but we start at the consulate. This is the most common type of residency that people obtain, is temporary or permanent residency, okay? Now, the way this works is temporary residency. Let's go over here to temporary residency, and you have different requirements, okay? Now, the first requirement that I list here, and I'm not sure if many of you that are watching on the phone aren't going to see this, but I'll make this available, but is an investment or savings account, and you have to show 12 months of bank statements with a balance of approximately, and I put 54,000 US dollars. And the reason why I put that is because they use a formula, okay? It's 500 days times the minimum wage, and that's approximately, the minimum wage is 207.55, okay? And you take that 300 days and you actually multiply it, and it comes out to approximately 1,037 pesos 750. When I did this chart, the exchange rate was my actual exchange rate that I was using was actually the exchange rate that I was using was 19-1. Now, I'm going to explain something a little bit later on, and I'm actually going to bring up another chart here. But let's go over the next. There's a monthly or not and, or you can show a monthly income. This is what everybody concentrates on. In my last stream, I actually talked about everybody says you have to have $3,000 a month, or you have to have $3,200 a month, or you have to show $3,200 a month. We concentrate so much on the monthly requirements, but what people don't understand is you can also qualify with savings. So let's say you don't make $3,200 a month, or and I actually these are estimated amounts using around 19-1. But what if I don't make $3,200 a month, but I have $55,000 in savings and I've had it for the last year? Okay, then you can actually take your 12 bank statements to the consulate, and you can say, I may have $55,000 in savings. Then you go over the monthly income, all right? And the monthly income is 300 days times the minimum wage, which is, again, 207.55, and that's approximately 62,000 pesos, which comes out to about $3,200 a month. Now, there is another way, too, is if you own a house in Mexico, but very few people qualify on this, or actually try to qualify on this, because if they qualify on this, they usually qualify on other terms. But you can actually own a home here in Mexico, but that's 40,000 days times the minimum wage, which is approximately 8 million pesos, 8,302 pesos, which would be about $434. So if you have a $500,000 home here, then you can actually apply by showing the escritura, what they call the escrituras, which is your title to your house. And you say, I own this property. Now, temporary residency, these are the I think Cindy asked me at one point that 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then the work permit. These are the current immigration fees. What will happen if you qualify for temporary residency? You will actually get 1 year right off the bat. If you apply, okay, you'll apply for 1 year right off the bat, and these are the fees. If you are married to a Mexican citizen and apply for temporary residency through the consulate, when you get to immigration, you can actually apply for up to 2 years, because you can convert to Mexican residency, permanent residency. And that's why it says 2 years here. These are the immigration fees. And then after your 1 year, your actual additional 3 years, after 1 year, you can renew for up to 3 years to make it a total of 4 years. After 4 years, you can convert it to permanent residency without financial solvency requirements. Okay. Now, this is where we talk about permanent residency. All right. In Article 52 of the immigration law, it actually, in Section 7, it talks about temporary residency, an individual under temporary residency, and it goes on to say that they can stay up to 4 years. And then Article 52, Section 9 talks about permanent residency, and it shows but see, here's the thing, in the immigration law, it's totally separate from what you're required. All the immigration law says is that, and this is where I think this is where there was a misconception or a misstatement of all you got to do is be retired. All you got to do is be retired. You don't need to show financial solvency. The reason why this individual said that is he's twisting the law of Article 52, Section 9. And actually in Article 54, Section 3, it actually says you can apply for permanent residency under the certain conditions. And then it lists several conditions. And one of the conditions actually states that they are retirees or pensioners who receive from a foreign government or organization, international or private companies for services rendered abroad, an income that allows them to live in the country. Okay. So Article 54, Section 3 is why when you go to a consulate, they tell you that you need to have your income show from a pension source. So like I show here, let's go with the monthly income first because that's what everybody talks about. And it says monthly income from a pension source only, or you must show you're of retirement age. Okay. That is to comply with Article 54, Section 3 of the law. Okay. Now, but here's the thing. The consulate is what determines your requirements for permanent residency. Okay. So there's a difference between the actual law. So I could sit here and tell you Article 54, Section 3 says that you only need to be retired. That's only half the formula. You have to be retired, but then you also have to prove to the consulate that you meet these requirements. So the first one is monthly income from a pension source only, 6 months of bank statements with monthly deposits of approximately $5,400 a month. That's higher than temporary residency. It's not lower, it's higher. It's not Social Security. You have to show approximately 500 days times the minimum wage, which is approximately 103 pesos a month. Now, on investments and savings, you have to show 20,000 days times the minimum wage, which is actually 4,151,000, which is approximately $217,000 in your savings for the last 12 months. Now, here's the other thing with savings. Some people have 401ks, and what was brought to my attention is correct. For example, you have to show that you're retired and that you can draw from your 401k. They won't accept your 401k right now just based on, I got a 401k and it's got $500,000 in it, or I got $1 million in it. You actually have to show that you're retired, usually of the retirement age, and that you can withdraw from that 401k. So the 401, and then there have been some consulates that ask for 12 statements when you're like, what, I only get quarterly statements. There's very few consulates that do that, but there are some. And they don't accept cryptocurrency. Now, there's a one-time immigration fee because, of course, when permanent residency, you're permanent. I mean, you don't have to renew. All right. Now, let's discuss the alternative methods. And these are just the alternative legal methods up until this point. And we're going to discuss two more alternative methods that are not necessarily going to be here all the time and also not necessarily consistent, but these are consistent no matter what. Needs to be pre-approved at the consulate and can be done at the INM office on a tourist visa. So these two ways, you don't have to go to a consulate. You can go straight to immigration and you can do the process right there. And that's if you're married to a Mexican national or you have a child born in Mexico. Okay. So That is how Jose got his, and I'm using this as an example because this was in my last stream. That is how Jose got his residency. He was married to a Mexican national. Now, we'll go back to these other alternative ways. I'm gonna go back to my live stream here real quick. Now, there's some alternative ways that have been presented to everybody, and everybody talks about these. And what you need to understand is that these alternative ways, you still need to qualify for them, okay? It's not as easy as, one YouTuber says, just show up. If you show up, trust me, don't worry, Mexico's not going to kick you out. And that's not necessarily true, okay? One of the ways that's mentioned a lot now, but it's actually being phased out and it's not totally being said totally correctly, is the regularization program. First of all, everybody says during COVID, they started this program because people couldn't go back to their countries. Actually, the truth is the regularization program has always existed. What immigration did during the period of COVID was they activated the regularization program, and they actually started using the regularization program. Actually, during COVID, most of the people that were being granted residency were not being granted residency on the regularization program. Actually, the regularization program came around the end of COVID. They actually were using humanitarian reasons to let people stay, okay? And what happened with this regularization program? The truth about the regularization program that a lot of people don't mention, and everybody actually said that this is because of COVID. And I'm going to tell you for a fact, I know this because like I said, I have contacts. I worked with Mexican immigration. I know what's been going on for the past several years, is that Mexico, when the new president came in, basically said, we need to upgrade the immigration system. Our immigration system is antiquated. Everything's done on paper, even though we have computers. And I've said this in the past. Most of the computers, when they scanned your passport, within 72 hours, your information was deleted. It was whatever space they had on the hard drive, that's what contained your information. And what would happen is this box of FMMs would go to this big warehouse, and I've actually seen these warehouses, and be filed away. And that's the way they were doing their record keeping. So the new president said, we need to modernize the immigration system. And one of the ways, we also need to cut down on corruption. So one of the ways of cutting down on corruption is that if we modernize the immigration system and we actually put its systems in place where the immigration officer that issues the permission is put in a position where they are held liable for giving that permission, then we can actually track down the individuals that are corrupt. And also, it's going to discourage immigration officials from taking bribes, because they know that when they give a permission, they have to put their name on to the actual permission on the computer. Because before, it was just a paper system. All right. So immigration, and I'm not kidding you, actually went and contracted companies to go into these warehouses and scan all these FMMs into the system. They also started a tracking system. So when you make entry into Mexico and make exit out of Mexico, it's actually recorded in a computer now. So they can actually look at your entries and your exits. And so then what they did was they modernized the immigration system. And it was totally unrelated to COVID or anything else. Because what happened when they actually automated the immigration system, they had a lot of people that were actually, believe it or not, we talk about border runs, running to the border every 6 months. But what happened is that immigration got a little bit lax on immigration enforcement. And what they did was they just said, you know what, if you're here on an expired visa, as a matter of fact, I even know people that were here, living here many years ago on an expired visa, or not visa, but let's say FMM, but I use visa as a term that's very common. And they were living here on an FMM, and when they lived here on the FMM, they let it expire. And if they got stopped by immigration would say, you know what? Oh yeah, you know what? You're an American. I don't want to mess with sending you back, and don't worry about it. You know, who cares? And actually, one YouTuber even said Mexico doesn't care. But unfortunately, he said it when Mexico started cracking down on this. But what Mexico did with the regularization program, what a lot of people don't realize, is they said, you know what? We have people that have been living here for years, literally years, running to the border every month or every 180 days. We've had people that are actually living here illegally or irregular, as in Mexico would call it. So let's do something. Let's do something about it. Let's give these people a chance. We're not going to, we've been lax on immigration. The idea was we've been lax on immigration. We've been letting these people live in Mexico with expired documents. We've been letting these people go to the border every 6 months. Let's give them an avenue to become legal, because they might not meet the financial solvency requirements, or they may not be able to go home because of COVID. That's why this started around the time of COVID. Okay, so what did they do? They started this regularization program, and this regularization program has never really been consistent. Some offices were requiring that you had an entry before 2020 and a passport stamp before 2020, and other offices were requiring that you actually be from the area. As a matter of fact, Querétaro, I'm going to tell a story about Querétaro. Querétaro, there was the requirement that you had to live in the Querétaro area. There was actually an immigration officer taking bribes, and they caught him, and 20 people, I think, from Ajijic almost lost their residency, and they were just a victim of a scam. But basically, each office has set up their requirement. What happened was they started to market this program. It wasn't really taking off, so they started loosening up on their requirements. And COVID ended, and they started, I think, modernizing more and more, and they've kept this program alive. Okay. But here's the problem. There was word that it was going to go away in 2022. It didn't go away in 2022. It's still around in 2023. But here's the catch. It's only available in a handful of offices, INM offices here in Mexico. All right. So when YouTubers talk about, well, there's a regularization program, that's a way to get in. Yes, there's a regularization program that's gearing down, and it is actually evaluated every 6 months. Okay. So in 6 months or in June, the regularization program could go away in whatever offices they exist in. It could stay and it could go away. Now, here's the other problem too with the regularization program. Some offices are saying you had to have your expired FMM needs to be an 180-day expired FMM. So that means you must have an expired document, but it must be a 180-day FMM. Other offices like Merida are saying, oh, and some offices are saying, oh, and not only that, but it has to be in 2022. Other offices like Merida, and I believe Merida is probably one of the ones that's really, really lax, and I think Huatuco is another one. But they're saying, we don't care. We just want an expired FMM. If you made entry before 2022, and not only did you make entry before 2022, but that you also, we don't care, as long as you made an entry, you have a passport stamp before 2022, and you show an expired FMM, even if you came in 2023, we'll take it. We'll regularize you. Okay. And so there's no consistency. You still have to meet requirements. So what's being done here is it's a play on words. There's alternative methods. There's a regularization program. There's getting married to a Mexican citizen. And that is the justification for saying that's why we're doing videos on $1,000 a month. That's why we're doing video. But the truth is you still need to meet requirements, even through the regularization program. Now, here's the last alternative method, which is mentioned, and was mentioned in the video, is what we call perpetual tourist option, going to the border every 6 months, which is the first one that I showed you. All right. Actually, in Article 52 of the immigration law, like I stated last time, it says it has several visitor type things, but there is a FMM that you can get as a visitor, not as a resident, not as a person who lives here. And that's why Jose said you couldn't get a bank account. That's why Jose said that they're restricted from doing certain things, is because you're here as a visitor. All right. And Article 52 says that one of them, Section 1 of the Article 52, says that one of the types is visitor without permission to carry out paid activities. There's one for visitor for humanitarian, all of that stuff. And what it states in the law is that a visitor, not a person coming here to live here, without permission to carry out paid activities, which is the common FMM that is given, can stay in the country for up to a maximum of 180 days. All right. Then later on in the immigration law, it says that it's through the administrative provisions of the Secretariat, they will basically through the administrative INM will establish the validity or the authorization that you qualify for upon entry into the country. Okay, this is where the last time I told you that once you are issued an FMM, it's totally legal because you presented yourself to an immigration officer. You said, I want 180 days. I'm coming here to visit. Even if you're not coming here to visit, I mean, I'm almost sure if you told the immigration officer, I'm coming here to live, they're going to tell you, we're not letting you in. So you presented yourself that I'm coming here to visit. And the immigration officer, it's up to him to determine whether you're really coming here to visit and you meet that requirement. In some places, in some instances, they'll ask you for plane tickets. They'll ask you for proof of stay. They'll ask you how much money you have on you. Those are, like I said, this is no different than the way immigration conducts itself in any country. Even if you go to Europe, Europe has some weird things of going in 90 days, coming out 90 days, going in 90 days, but it's still the same thing. The immigration officer determines, even in the United States, they determine, is this person coming here to work? Is this person coming here to live? And if they are, we're not going to grant them permission. Okay, here's where the misconception has come. The thing is that everybody says, well, it's totally legal. Or I've also heard the argument of nowhere in the immigration law does it say it's illegal. Well, it's because people want the immigration law to say it is illegal to live here. The immigration law doesn't say that. What the immigration law does is it sets out the different types of stays, basically as a visitor, as a resident, or temporary resident, as a permanent resident. Okay, so that's where the law comes in. The law doesn't come in by saying it is illegal to do this. Okay, most laws in most countries aren't like that. Most laws will say this is the requirement for whatever and blah, blah, blah. And then it is up to the interpretation of the courts or the immigration officer or whatever it is to interpret that. Now, here's the problem with the 180-day thing, okay? 5 years ago, and I know people have been doing this for years, 5 years ago, people were doing it and it was no problem because basically there was no system of tracking people, okay? And now there is. But here's the problem with this system, and most facilitators will tell you, you know, if you need to run to a border 180 days, that's an option. But here's the problem. You're not guaranteed 180 days. You are not guaranteed it. Okay? You could come back in after 180 days and they can give you 7 days. They can give you 14 days. They can ask you for hotel reservations. They can ask you for anything, and you're not guaranteed. Now, here's where the big misconception comes in, because I think even Jordan has made some comments. Well, they're getting more lax on it. Well, what happened a year ago, and a lot of people don't know this, is about a year ago, they started going crazy in the airport, giving 7 days at the airports, giving 7 days, giving 14 days. Actually, they were giving 7 days to people in Cancun that were on. There were several people that had actually 2-week vacations that had to come back early because they couldn't even get 14 days. They actually had proof. And there was only giving out 7 days. And of course, it went crazy they're cracking down on immigration. But the truth is, let me tell you why that happened last year. Okay. And this goes into a segue why I say this method is risky. Okay. Last year, the U.S. government decided to place pressure on Mexico because the United States was having problems with Venezuelans that were entering through Mexico. Because at the time, Venezuelans were just like Americans. They didn't need a visa. They just would come in, present themselves, get their 180-day FMM. They would travel to the United States and enter in the United States. So the United States saw a big, huge influx of Venezuelans that were coming into the United States. So Mexico was told and actually this is nothing new. I mean, if you read the news, it's very obvious. But what happened was they said, you need to crack down, and they had several meetings with the exterior relations here. They said, you need to crack down on Venezuelans coming into your country, and you need to get more strict on FMMs. You need to get more strict on FMM. So what did the Mexican government do? The Mexican government said, okay, what's fair is fair. We're going to be strict on everybody, not just Venezuelans. So that's why last year, all of a sudden at the airports, they're only giving 7 days. Well, guess what happened last year too? Not only were tourists getting 7 days and legitimate people that had 14-day vacations, but some border runners only got 7 days. And they didn't get their 180 days. They got 7 days. And all because of a political situation. It had nothing to do with them cracking down on you. That had nothing to do with you're flagged in the computer. It had something to do with a political situation. And now, too, the immigration officer has the resources, because it's his discretion, to look at it. And if the immigration officer wants to, he can say, you can only get 7 days, no days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, or he can give you 180 days. So it's not guaranteed. And here's the thing. About 6 months ago, Mexico went to an electronic FMM process. Excuse me. Mexico went to an electronic FMM process. Congress, about 2 years ago, passed a law that got published last year that enabled immigration to utilize technology to expedite lines at the airport. Okay? So what happened was immigration created a system of this electronic FMM. Now you don't have to fill out the piece of paper. The reason for this is that they want to get you to the line. Instead of waiting 4 hours at Cancun Airport in the line for the immigration officer to check your paperwork and to sign your FMM and to put the FMM away, what they did was they created a system so that they could get you through. And actually the goal in Cancun, if I'm not mistaken, when they actually did a press release on this, is they wanted to get people through within 30 minutes. In other words, all the flights coming in, they wanted to get you through within 30 minutes. Okay, so that's the reason for the electronic FMM. So what's the easiest way to get you in within 30 minutes? To give everybody 180 days, all right? Now, this is a system, all right, This is a system that is still in progress. They're still trying to figure out, because the actual thing from Congress, the directive from Congress is you need to expedite entry into Mexico and exits. We don't want people to wait while they're exiting the country, because with residents, you have to check in with immigration. We want you to expedite that. We don't want the resident to have to go to the immigration office and sit in your office for 30 minutes while you check them out. And we don't want all the arriving flights to wait in line for more than 30 minutes. They didn't say more than 30 minutes, but the goal was in Cancun is 30 minutes. We don't want visitors or anybody entering the country to have to wait for more than 30 minutes while they're coming into the country. So that is what immigration is doing right now. The problem is that when they started issuing these 180-day visas, everybody came out on YouTube saying 180 days is the new norm. 180 days is what they're going to give you. That is not totally correct. 180 days is what they're giving a majority of people, because basically they're pushing a button, they're looking at your passport, they're writing in 180, signing it, and stamping the passport. And that is what they're doing. It's not because they're getting lax on immigration rules. It's not because immigration rules no longer apply. It is because they are trying to expedite people through the airport. Now, what people don't understand is that the systems that they put in place, and I'm very familiar with the systems that they put in place, because they're the same systems that the United States has and a lot of other countries, is eventually what's going to happen is if you keep on coming in and out of the country back to back, there's going to be a little flag. And a lot of you guys have heard of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. And I'm going to tell you right now, immigration and all of these agencies are going to start going to this type of intelligence, but it's going to be able to say flag, red flag. So what's going to happen eventually? I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow. I'm not going to say this is going to happen in the next 2 days or 3 days. But what is eventually going to happen is they're going to be able to say, okay, this guy, good. Let him in for 180 days. This guy, good, 180 days. This guy, good, 180 days. This guy, good, 180. Oh, this next guy, 3 back-to-back entries. You know what? Go over there to secondary to go talk to another immigration officer so that you can try to tell us why you need another 180 days. That is eventually what the goal of the system is. All right. But what's going on right now is that people are using this to say, oh, no. But here's the problem with this 180 days. Let's say what I'm saying is true. Eventually, you'll get flagged. Or what if you just catch an immigration officer on a bad day? He just, you know what? Today, I just don't like Americans, or I don't like Canadians. Every Canadian that comes through, and believe it or not, that is how much discretion an immigration officer has. You know what? Today, I'm going to give all Canadians 7 days just because I just feel like it. That is how much discretion an immigration officer has. So you cannot actually rely on the 180 days. The other thing is that you need to take into factors on the 180 days is that most of the places where you can still get 180 days and they're not going to ask questions are land borders, because the land borders are a lot more behind on updating their computer systems and stuff. And the land borders are a little bit less controlled. I mean, literally, if you don't report to the immigration officer, there's a lot of people that even don't report to the immigration officer office, and they keep going. Well, nobody stopped me. And they don't realize, oh, shoot, I was supposed to get a permission. So, basically, the land borders are a little bit easier, but that also is going to incur an expense. You're going to have to travel all the way from Ajijic to a land border, either Guatemala or Texas, per se. That's a great expense. That might be an expense that someone living here on $1,000 a month can't really do. Even coming in on the airports where, quote, quote, they're letting people in for 180 days. That means you have to fly out of the country and then come back. And that's a round trip ticket. which a lot of people living here on $1,000 a month may not be able to afford. Now, I'm not saying, because here's the thing, I do get it. I get it that there are a lot of people in the United States just can't live here on $1,000. I mean, can't live in the United States on Social Security. That's the reality. Okay. And I speak for the United States because that's where I'm from. I don't know about Canada, but I speak from reality. That's the reality. It's very hard to live on the average Social Security check. Last year was $1,500. I think it's $1,800 and something this year. Okay. So it's $1,800 this year. There's not a lot of places in the United States that you can live for $1,800 a month. And yes, there are a lot of places that you can live here. A lot of Americans are looking for alternative places to live. So maybe Mexico is your alternative. And maybe you don't qualify for financial solvency. I'm not saying don't come here and don't run to the border for 180 days. But what I'm trying to tell everybody is, and I even said this in my last stream, have a plan B. Have a plan. Because if they don't let you in, or they only give you 7 days, and this has happened to people that have been here for, it just happened to people that have been here 5 years, 6 years. I told a story about a Canadian who got stuck in Belize during COVID and then went down to Guatemala and got stuck in Guatemala. And he didn't have a plan B. What I'm telling people is if you're going to rely on this running to the border every 6 months, just be aware that it's not guaranteed. Have a plan B. Have a way of, if they don't let you in, have a way of getting your stuff back, especially if you left a lot of stuff back here in Mexico. Have an alternative location. There's other alternative locations where you may qualify that you might not want to go to, but you can qualify. Have those locations in mind. Have some type of savings built up that in case you have to move to another location that you can, or you have to move back to the United States, you can. That's what's important in this whole thing. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into financial solvency again. And then we're going to go into the second portion of my live stream. But the first portion of the live stream is when I told you in the first portion that there's certain financial requirements. There's this formula, okay, that's used. But I kind of actually did exactly what the YouTuber said, and I actually twisted words. Because this is the formula that's used by SRE, but I'm also going to show you that formula means something different in every consulate you go to. Okay? And the reason why that formula means something different, and I'm going to actually pull up something. It's actually from Mexico Relocation Guide. And this is from Mariana put this together. And I'm here to tell you that this is one of the locations that's, one of the businesses that actually conducts themselves. She runs a business, but she's also very honest with her customers. And she actually put together for 2023, and actually it's MexicoRelocationGuide.com. She sells a guide. I actually endorse her. I don't get any money off of her. I don't make any, she's not a sponsor here. Oh, she does do videos with me every once in a while. But she did her research. Okay. And, just like in that last video, Jose said, we do our research, yada, yada, yada. Well, let's do our research. Okay. And I'm pulling up a person that has actually called the consulates, that has actually gone to their website, has actually researched everything. And what this person found from Mexico Relocation Guide is that this formula is inconsistent. All right. Some people, sometimes you could run into a consulate that asks for something as low as $2,593. And last year it was around $1,700, but they actually raised it up to $3,300. And you're going to say, Ernie, what do you mean? And I'm going to say, because some of the consulates, this 3,300, remember I said 3,200? I figured it at 3,200 at 18 pesos to 1. But the consulate could say, we're going to figure that 60,000 pesos at 17 to 1, at 19 to 1. Or we're going to use our own formula, okay? And some consulates for savings for temporary start at $41,000 and go up to $52,000 in savings, just depending on which consulate you go to. All right? So if you noticed, I played on words at the beginning of this. I actually told you it's $300 times the minimum wage. So it's around $3,200. So I could easily tell you it's around $3,200. But if you look at these actual consulate numbers, it can be anywhere from, like I told you before, it could be anywhere from $2,593 to $3,300, or $41,000 up to $52,000. And permanent residency, to dispel the myth that all you have to do is be retired, under Article 52, Section 9, which claims all you have to do is retired. Well, here's the requirements. The income is at $4,200 all the way up to $5,400. Not Social Security wages at all. As a matter of fact, $4,200 is almost more than double what the average Social Security check is. Now, and actually, higher end Social Security, if I were to collect at 67, I wouldn't even make $4,200 a month without my pension. And the savings would start at 170 up to 208. Okay? So even though this person said, oh, and then we had a subsequent conversation, and he said, no, all you have to do is go consulate shopping. Well, you know what? There's no amount of consulate shopping that's going to get you at Social Security. It's not going to get you to $1,000 a month or $1,800 a month. And I'm going to show you numbers. I'm not going to sit there and claim certain things or say certain things. I'm going to show you facts. I do my stuff based on facts. I don't insinuate and I don't imply. I do it based on true research. Okay? These are actual numbers. Now, I did mention, and actually this number of 1,060, somebody asked the last time, what if I have a family? If you're a couple applying together or a spouse, you'll need to show an additional $1,060. Actually, I had read somewhere 800. I think last time I said 800. It is more towards 1,060, but at some other consulates, it's 800. Okay. But like I said, as far as family members, that's another thing. You can do the family reunification program, which if one of you actually qualifies, one of you can get the residency and then bring the rest of you in. Here's the numbers, and I'm going to show you. Temporary residency for Atlanta is $3,200 a month. Savings, $54,000. Permanent residency, $5,400. 21. Permanent residency savings, $217,000. Austin, $3,200. Dallas, she wasn't able to get the Dallas numbers, but she was able to get the permanent residency numbers for Denver. Well, Denver's one I mentioned. Denver was one of the ones that's low at $2,593 or $43,000. Then you have 4,321 and 172,870. 172,870. And even in our conversation, Jose said, no. Yes, you have to show financial. He turned around and finally said you had to show financial. Well, if you show a pension, it's kind of obvious that you have to show financial solvency because you have a pension. But they're not as high as you're saying. They're high as I'm saying. Look at this. Houston, $2,500, $4,300 per permanent residency. This is what is required. Nogales, $3,200. McAllen, $28.79. Actually, McAllen used to be the lowest, but actually $28.79. Where are these 28, 25? I don't know where those numbers came from. To be honest with you, I don't know what formula they use. I know, like I said, Wise Owl said he figured it out at 200 times the minimum wage. And I didn't do the calculations. I'm sorry if I didn't. But McAllen and Brownsville is only actually 80 miles down the road from McAllen, or 60 miles down the road, I'm sorry, from McAllen. And look at the difference. Look at the difference between McAllen and Brownsville. These are the real numbers that you have to meet. And this is actually available. I'll leave the link. Basically, it's MexicoRelocationGuide.com/visas, and it'll take you to this page. This is part of her free information. She does sell a guide that's a little bit more detailed on how to facilitators, and then she shows a couple of the Canadian and the United Kingdom. Now, these are numbers that I'm showing you that have actually been researched, not implications, not me just saying so, not me just implying that, oh, all you need to do is be retired. These are actual numbers. And this brings me into the second portion of my stream. The second portion of my stream is what I stressed the last time, is that we need to separate the difference between financial solvency requirements and meeting, or not financial solvency, meeting the residency requirements and affording to live here. And it's very true that you can afford to live here. I'm going to pull up a website here called unveil.com, where you can actually compare the cost of living between any city in the world with any other city in the world. Okay. And they'll give you, these are based on averages in that city. Okay. So I'm going to pull these numbers up and I'm going to show you that it is in fact true that you can live for more affordable here in Mexico. Cost of living comparison between Houston and Playa del Carmen. It goes into saying that consumer prices in Playa del Carmen are 43.2% lower than Houston without rent. I think Playa del Carmen is 39% lower, 55% lower than you. If you look at it, everything's lower than Houston, Texas. And this goes into numbers. Like it's an average meal at a restaurant is going to cost you $5 versus $17. That's a 67% difference. And it'll even go into rents. Okay. Now it does say here rent. You could probably find something cheaper here. I'm going to go to rent here. Clothing, shoes, rent. On one bedroom apartment, it says $958, but you could probably get something cheaper depending on your level of living. So here's the thing. Can you live in Mexico for less than $1,000 a month? I don't disagree. But you need to separate the residency requirements, what it's going to take you to be here, and what it actually costs to live here. And you can't just show up. Like some people say, just show up. That's not as easy as saying just show up. And I'll even give you an example. I was doing a consult not too long ago of an individual who found out about the actual regularization program, but he had left Mexico. So he had contacted somebody in Merida, and Merida said, hey, we still got it. As a matter of fact, if you come in now and you get 180 days and let it expire, not 180 days, but you get an expired visa. And his question on the consult was, how do I get 14 days? Because I don't want to stay the whole 180 days because they might not renew the program in June. And he was told specifically by the facilitator, they may not renew it in June. And he says, how do I get 14 days? And I'm like, okay, where are you going to fly into? And he said, well, I'm going to fly into Cancun. And he's been out of the country for a while, so he's not going to set off a flag. And I said, well, unfortunately, if you come into Cancun, more than likely you're going to get 180 days. So your only option right now, I mean, yes, I gave him some advice. Maybe you might want to get some hotel reservations and insist that you want to stay here for 14 days. But more than likely the guy's going to push the button and write 180 days in your visa. The other problem also that has happened before with facilitators is they'll say 7 days, but in the system they'll put 180 days. So when you go with your expired FMM, which you can't go with now because now it's in the computer. So if you pull it up afterwards, even though you have the passport stamp and it says 180 days, then you're there for 180 days. So what I told him is you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to go as soon as possible, stay for 180 days and hope the program's still around. And that is an actual, risk that person has to take. And that person was very insistent. Well, but I don't want to, what if it's not around in 180 days? Or what if, my 180 days expires and the regularization program is gone? I said, well, you're going to have to look for a plan B. Go get your 180 days. And then he says, well, then they told me about border runs. I said, yeah, but that's not guaranteed. And I don't want to run to the border. And actually, this person didn't want to run to the border. He said, I just don't have money to go to the border every 180 days. So everybody's situation is different. And when I consulted this individual, actually, he was in the reverse position of most people that already have an expired visa and can just go to the regularization program. This person doesn't have one. He's got to come on and try to get one to qualify. So, all of your situations are going to be different. Another important thing to note about all of this stuff is that we need to separate these two things. When you see some of these videos, and I know a lot of people that live here and live in Playa del Carmen, actually Mexico Relocation Guide, who I've just said is a great resource. They do videos on people that live in Playa del Carmen on a $2,000 a month budget, on a $1,500 a month budget. They do those videos, but she's also very clear that you have to also qualify to come in. And some of the interviews that she does are with people that have been here for years, people that met the residency requirements way before these requirements were very high. Now, here's one good thing that I kind of see, but I don't want to sit here and bring people's hopes up, but the consulate uses the minimum wage as an economic indicator. In 2016, Mexico used to use the minimum wage for figuring out fines, figuring out financial solvency, figuring out everything, because for Mexico, that was their economic indicator, okay, for financial solvency. In the United States, the economic indicator is that you have to live 10% above the poverty line. And the poverty line number is actually determined, okay? In Mexico, they said you have to have this formula of 200 times the Mexican minimum wage. I'm not going to go into argument because many people will say, well, $3,000 is a lot compared to what a nurse makes. And actually, I can tell you right now, Jordan was right. An emergency room nurse makes less than what a person on Social Security makes, or equivalent. But what you need to understand is the financial solvency is based on this idea of not being a burden on the government, and without going into details, and I've gone into details before, but the bottom line on all of this is the Mexican government, they decide what we want to say is financially solvent, burden on the government, not burden on the government. It's not up to us to decide because we bring in more money or anything else. It's up to the government. So the government was using the Mexican minimum wage. The problem is that the Mexican minimum wage has been going up by 10 to 20% every year for the last 5 to 10 years. 5 years ago, the actual qualification to get in, you could actually qualify pretty much almost with the average Social Security check. Okay. Now it's almost double. It's more than double in 5 years since I've been here, because the Mexican minimum wage has been going up. Okay, in 2016, there was another number. It's called the UMA number, okay? In 2016, the Mexican president said, hey, this is not right. It's too much, okay? The Mexican minimum wage is no longer an economic indicator. So they went and actually this UMA, they did, it's put together by economists. It's a certain branch of the government that takes a bunch of stuff into consideration and basically says, hey, 103.74 is more practical. 207 is too much. Or at the time it was 170 something. And actually the UMA at that time, when in 2016, was like in the 90s and the 80s. And they said, from here on out, all Mexican agencies, all government agencies must use the UMA and actually using it in your formula. Well, one thing happened in 2016. Everybody but immigration and exterior relations went to this UMA indicator. Okay, so everybody's using it. They've been using it since 2016. Last year, the Mexican president, basically, I don't know if he got upset, what happened, but he basically told Mexican immigration, what's your problem? You were told in 2016 to go to the UMA formula. You need to go to the UMA formula. So if you go to an INM office and actually ask them, what are the financial solvency requirements? They will tell you approximately $1,700 or approximately $1,600. And that's true because that's what they require in Mexico. But the problem is you have to get through the consulate. It's kind of broken right now. So technically with immigration, it's $1,700, but you just saw the numbers I showed you with exterior relations, which is saying it's $3,200. And the reason why it's exterior relations is holding out. I worked in the diplomatic community. I was assigned to the State Department. I worked with other diplomats throughout the world. I worked with Mexican diplomats when I was working in DC. And one thing that I learned, and we always used to say this, even with the State Department, is every consulate's its own little kingdom. Okay? And people need to understand that consulates are sort of like immigration officers. They have total discretion. And I'm not kidding you. When I was in Brazil, I wasn't a consulate officer approving visas. I was an attaché, a country attaché. But I actually went to the visa section a couple of times because I had to help with some certain individuals that they were asking questions about and interview them or whatever. But I'm not kidding you. Even people that met the financial solvency requirements for a visa didn't need to be approved. This is the U.S. consulate. And it same goes for the Mexican consulate. The thing in the diplomatic community is that the usually most State Departments or exterior relations, whatever you want to call them, most diplomatic departments within a country, their mission is to carry out the mission of the country, but they also are given a lot of leeway. They are given full discretion. So the consulate has full discretion. Tomorrow, the consulate could say, we want $6,000 for temporary residency because that's what we think temporary residency is worth. Now, here's the thing. Everybody's in the UMA formula, and maybe the Secretary of Exterior Relations might reconsider. I thought, honestly, I even did a video saying immigration went to the UMA formula. We might see, I never said we would, we might see a change. We might see a change in these financial requirements. And that's another thing that you need to take away from this, is these financial requirements can change at any time. They can change up, or hopefully, if we go to the UMA formula one day, instead of $3,200, we're looking at $1,700 a month for temporary residency. And here's the other thing too. Our current Mexican president here only has a year and a half to go. So we're going to have another Mexican president come in, another exterior relations secretary come in, and immigration policy could change totally 180 degrees. So you could see these requirements go up. You could see these requirements go down. You could see more enforcement on border runs or perpetual tours. You could see less enforcement. My point is to keep up to date, do your research, and make sure you just don't take someone's word on it that's trying to sell you on, and like I told you the last time, Cancun is not Mexico. The Riviera Maya is not Mexico. Mexico works differently no matter where you go. And I actually gave some examples. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. You just need to stay up to date. And you need to take into consideration, these videos that are being say, can you live on Social Security? You need to understand that Tangerine Travels, that is how he makes money. He makes money off of producing videos that are going to get views, that are going to get him in front. That interview with Jose Arteaga was a money grab. It was a money grab for Jordan, because Jordan got to present this guy that came here almost homeless and how he is able to make it and get a bunch of views. And Jose got to be exposed to a YouTube channel with over 280,000 subscribers. And Jose happens to offer his services for $100 an hour. I'll answer your questions for anywhere from $20 to $100. I'll do a video for you on your question for whatever price. Send an email and I'll tell you how much. Okay. Now, does this mean that Tangerine Travels doesn't put out great information? No. He went into the Social Security video and he brought up rents in the different places. Great resource for anybody that's looking to move in on Social Security that has $1,800 a month and actually, believe it or not, actually wants to come here and live here on an 1,800. And let's say I'm married to a Mexican citizen. I just consulted somebody today that's married to a Mexican citizen. I told them, hey, don't worry about it. Go to Mexico. You may already be in Mexico. You qualify for the regularization program. Do it. And so to you, that video may be useful, but to the general public who's seen this for the first time, that's looking for the alternative, like I said, they're going to do videos on what gets views. They're going to do video. As a matter of fact, one of the things I get accused of so much, I just did a safety video not too long ago about some issues that were going on Highway 57. And I actually said, there's a particular stretch, and it was a complex situation. There's a particular stretch of highway. I'm doing it. And what's the first thing that was told to me? Well, you worry, why don't you tell us what highway? Because of course, the person didn't want to watch the video. He just wanted a synopsis, so he didn't have to watch the video. And he said, you're more worried about your viewers than you are about the community's safety. And I'm like, no, I'm not worried about my viewers. The actual situation is kind of complex. And if I just said the highway, it's actually a particular stretch of highway. It's not the whole highway. And if I say the highway, then all of a sudden people are going to get paranoid. People down in Mexico City are going to get, because this is a highway that stretches all the way from down in Mexico City all the way up to the border. So if I tell you that it's highway, and actually it's Highway 57, but if I say Highway 57, everyone's going to freak out and say this whole highway is dangerous. No, it's a certain stretch of highway. So we all understand that, but subconsciously we don't say anything. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And we're going to go on to our questions, because I think I've spent enough time on that. And does anybody have any question? I'm just going to put up some comments here. Burro, we bought the Mexican Relocation Guide and have found invaluable, well worth the price, helped us get temporary residency. This is, like I said, a perfect example of a legitimate business that charges for a guide and gives good information. And Traveler 444, the Mexico Relocation Guide is a valuable resource. I'm very happy I purchased it. And so I'm not against businesses. This is, I'm not against YouTube channels that promote these kinds of things. But we just really need to remember that we need to focus on separating what needs to be done to live here and these videos of living here $1,000 a month. Nerd uno. Actually, not sure how someone can be a burden on the Mexican government as there's basically no welfare program. Actually, nerd, I actually have to disagree with you on that. What a lot of people don't realize is that welfare here in Mexico is not like we know it in the United States. You know, in the United States, and I could only compare it to the United States from there. In the United States, the welfare program is you make under a certain amount of money, and then they give you a check every month, or they give you food benefits or food stamps or subsidies, food subsidies. What a lot of people don't understand about Mexico is that the welfare is kind of built into the system. For example, electricity. If you use less than 500 kilowatt hours every month, your electricity is next to nothing. People will tell you, now, if you live in the Rivera Maya area, maybe not, because if you're running your air conditioner all day, but people will tell you, my electricity bill is $20 a month. My electricity bill is $40 a month. Now, let's say you live in Mérida and you're running your air condition all day. Okay, well, the reason why your electricity bill is only $20 a month under 500 kilowatt hours is because the government actually subsidizes your actual electricity. So up to 500 kilowatt hours, the government's paying for your electricity. After 500 kilowatt hours, what a lot of people have noticed is that then all of a sudden it doubles, triples, and those running their air conditioning every day are paying $300 a month, not $20 a month. So public transportation, you get on a public bus, it's 20 pesos, 10 pesos, which is like 5 cents, 10 cents. Not even 10 cents. It's less than pennies. Why is it only 20 pesos or 50 pesos? It's 50 pesos because the government subsidizes the bus. Okay. So it makes it affordable for the common person to live here. Farming, the seeds that the farmers plant, the animals that the farmers raise, they're subsidized by the government. So technically there's a welfare system here. It's just not an open welfare system, and it's not as generous, maybe say, as the United States, but there is a welfare system. And as far as burden on the government, believe it or not, it's up to the government to decide what they feel is a burden on them. That's always been the way it's always been with all the immigrations. Let's see here. Is there a difference? Okay, Sister Golden Hair. Is there a difference if I want to move to Baja? Sister Golden Hair, Baja's a little bit of a different animal. Baja is an actual free zone. Okay. And actually, I think even in the immigration law, it actually states that you're allowed to travel throughout the free zone. Now, it's kind of a catch-22 situation because you're in a free zone. There's a lot of things that you don't need. You don't need a temporary import permit. Technically, you need residency, but there's a lot of people that come back and forth from Tijuana, back and forth every day. And actually, if you get stopped by immigration, you're in a free zone. So you technically have to get an FMM, or not an FMM, actually an FMM if you're going to stay there for more than a certain amount of time, even in Baja. But nobody really gets it. A lot of people don't get it. Believe it or not, they don't get it because they're in the free zone. And they just pass immigration and keep going. And, I'm in a free zone. So, the best thing to do is consult people in the Baja area. Actually, almost retired in Mexico. He's out of the Baja, out of La Paz, I think. He can give you a little bit more of an idea of how it works in the free zone in Baja. Yes, you do technically need residency if you're going to live there. But I do know a lot of people that go and travel through Baja and just travel through Baja because when they stop at they don't have checkpoints checking your tip like they do here in Monterrey. So Baja's a little bit of a different animal, but I would actually join some of those Facebook groups and see what some of these people that are living there, or look at some of these videos from Almost Retired in Mexico. I haven't seen all his videos, but he has residency. So the rules in Baja are very different. Actually, even in Quintana Roo, it's a free zone for cars. So there's a lot of people that basically take their vehicles down there and get U.S. keep their U.S. plated vehicles. Sandra B. Hola. Is Mexican driver's license required to rent a vehicle as a permanent resident, or would your U.S. license suffice? Actually, I have a Mexican driver's license. I have rented a vehicle on my Texas driver's license before. Now that's up to the rental car company. I don't know if they've gotten stricter on it. You'd have to check with the rental car company. But I'll tell you what, Sandra, if you're a permanent resident here, you would be really well off getting you're better off getting your Mexican license. I do realize now one thing, Sandra, depending on where you're at. Now I'm in Monterrey. I had to actually take the driver's test. I actually had to go in the computer and I had to do it in Spanish, the whole 9 yards. But there are locations where there is no driver's test. And actually there are facilitators that'll help you get your Mexican driver's license. And those facilitators can get you by without having to take a driver's test or without having to take any kind of test. You just pay your fee and you get your driver's license. So actually, your best bet would probably to get a Mexican driver's license. Actually even helps. Believe it or not, when you're in certain parts of Mexico, if you show a Mexican driver's license, you're considered a local. You can even get better prices with a Mexican driver's license, showing that you're from that area per se. Any other questions before I sign off? Okay, I'd like to thank all the new members that came on tonight and all the people that supported the channel. Our Facebook group has been growing like a weed, and I really appreciate all those new people joining the Facebook group. Don't forget we have chat rooms too through Discord and Slack. Share the channel with your friends. I have a lot of information on different topics. Even like I said, I did one on a car crash, what to do in case you get in a car accident. Let me see. RA, what did you say was the Mexican Social Security number? The Mexican Social Security number, well, there's two numbers that you have in Mexico. Oh, that's needed for a bank account. Actually, that's the RFSA, RFSA. That's actually handled by SAT. When you get your residency, they will issue what they call a CORP. Your CORP is your national ID number, and your RFSA is your number for purposes of taxes. Now, the RFSA has kind of been in this, and actually RA basically followed up with this question that you need for a bank account. And basically, it's the RFC that you need for a bank account. And there are one or two banks that are still waiving the RFC requirement because the RFC, they kind of extended the deadline for it because everybody has to have one. They kind of extended the deadline and because SAT, the tax authority, has fallen behind. And the dude, I wish I could have asked earlier, but what's the detail? I have Mexican wife and wish to move to Mexico. Eventually I have I don't know what he was going to say, but I think he wants to ask how I get Mexican residency. If your wife is a Mexican national, basically you go straight to the INM office and make sure she has all of her documents, like her passport, her INE, her birth certificate, your marriage certificate, but make sure that your marriage certificate is apostolized and the names match. Okay, that her birth name matches her, whatever she has on her Mexican ID matches whatever the name is in the United States. There's a lot of times when because in the here in Mexico they use both last names. So, for example, they'll use Ernie. Like here in Mexico, I would be Baca Diaz. They would use Baca would be my last name, and Diaz is my mom's last name. So on her IDs, your Mexican wife's IDs, they may say Baca Diaz or whatever it might say, whatever it might be. But when you're in the United States, it might just be Baca because you only use one of the names on her documents when she got her residency. So just make sure all of that stuff is in order. And a good facilitator could help you out on that. And Heather actually says, I got mine in my Mexico driver's license in the state of Sonora, fast, easy, but did need the doctor to sign off on my health and police check. It had been excellent to show police border agents. It's been excellent when you show police border agents. Yes, it is, actually, when you pass through checkpoints. And then Raiko, I will have permanent residency visa and will travel to Querétaro on the 15th of October. Would I be able to get the actual residency card within 30 days? I'm retiring in 2 years. Thanks. Actually, if you already have that, you're going to have to get it within 30 days. I don't know how backed up the Querétaro office is. I would actually talk to a good facilitator. I know Yvonne Pavan is one of the ones that's very popular there. She can be found on Facebook. But you might want to talk to Yvonne and ask her, what do appointments look like? If I'm not mistaken, Querétaro's one of the offices that takes same-day appointments. And usually Querétaro's also one of the offices. The only thing is that sometimes they run out of plastic. Is also one of the offices that will issue you your card the same day. So you go in the morning, usually line up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes your facilitator will do it for you or hire someone to do it for you. You meet your facilitator. They fill out all your paperwork. You meet them around 8 o'clock in the morning that day. They'll take the first 50 people or 30 people or whatever it might be. And then you get your appointment. You walk out with your card the same day. Not appointment, but you get let in, the first 30 people. So that's why you have to line up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking Querétaro is one of those. But contact a good facilitator in the Querétaro area, and they should be able to tell you what's going on, how backed up they are. Do you need an appointment? How backed up the appointments are. Now, the other thing about the appointments is as long as if you enter on your 30-day permission, you get an appointment within the 30 days, but it's a month out or 2 months out. Let's say they're way behind. The fact that you got the appointment is proof enough that you did it within 30 days. The only problem is you're stuck there until you actually do the process. So you can't leave the country. And usually if you need to leave the country, sometimes you have to get this special permission to leave the country. And the problem with an appointment, you're not in the process, so you can't get the special, you're kind of in a limbo process. So you just got to be very careful when you're coming down here. If you just want to come down here, get the process done and leave. The best thing to do is get a hold of the facilitator and find out how long are the lines? Do they take same-day appointments? Can they make an appointment for you so that you can schedule when you're going to come down? And I got a lot of Raiko said. Reiko said thanks. Hello, thank you again for the valuable information. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. As always, I always go over a couple of minutes. I think we went over 30 minutes over my scheduled 1 hour. But I hope this information was useful, as I always see. And we'll see you soon. Also, if you have any suggestions for another live stream or a video that you'd like me to do, let me know in the comments here or let me know on Facebook. I'm preparing a couple of great videos. I have one on wills that I'm trying to work out with an attorney here. He hasn't gotten back to me yet. And I also have Actually, my brother-in-law, who's a Mexican attorney, is going to come on. I'm going to interview him about what's the laws about getting stopped by the police. So I have a lot of other stuff in store, but if you have other things that you want to know, let me know and I will make a video on it. Thank you very much for your time. I actually thank you for supporting me, and we'll see you soon.